One. Welcome everybody to Aphro-D Academy Masterclass. This one is with Corey Zehnder. We know he's a dear friend of ours. And in this webinar, he's going to cover some confidence and charisma secrets. And let's get into it. But first, can you introduce us or introduce yourself to us, Corey? Just give us a brief introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Andre. And hello, community. So great to see so many people on this call today. To tell you a little bit about myself, I've been in the Aphro-D community for almost 2 years now, I believe, and I've seen it grow and just flourish. And all of you guys that have recently joined, I mean, you're joining at such an excellent time because the brain share we have in this group is phenomenal. And the mindset is everyone's out to help each other. And I know that's rare with a lot of Facebook groups that tend to promise it. So welcome to everyone. A little bit about myself. I am a mindset coach. So I help people overcome mental blockages, whatever challenges they may be facing. And I've been doing this for the past 2.5 years. Prior to that, I had my own journey of self-growth and self-exploration, quite frankly, going from someone who was painfully shy. And when you see me talk today, it's going to be hard to believe me on that, but someone who was terrified, didn't know what to say in any social situation, totally lacked confidence, totally did not believe in myself, and transforming myself into someone who's on this never-ending journey of self-mastery, like I'm sure a lot of you are, and I'm sure that's what brought a lot of you to this masterclass today. So today we're going to be covering a lot of the foundational principles behind charisma and confidence. Now, these are two topics that have been covered in great detail. I don't have to be the one to tell you guys that. I mean, let me just ask you a question, like, who here feels like their life could be better with more charisma and more confidence? You could just raise your hand. Now, I can't see everyone, but I'm guessing everyone's raising their hand at this point. It's pretty fair to say that. But when it's taught a lot of the time, what I've noticed is people really focus on the traits. They sort of define what it is. And if you're looking at that from a place outside of yourself and outside of who you truly are, sometimes it could almost harm your personal growth and your ability to get to that point. And what I mean by that is this. As I was on my personal journey to get better with women, to get more confident, to be the type of person who's courageous and bold and not afraid to ask for things, something I deeply struggled with. I noticed that as I tried to mimic these traits straight up without a good strategy of self-discovery involved in there, or inner game, which is something I focus on a lot with a lot of my clients, I was being incongruent. I was trying to copy people in their own authentic styles that weren't aligned with me. And I'm sure many of you can relate to this, because if you're on YouTube watching infield videos of someone like RSD Max, who's been doing this for like 10, 15 years, and you try to emulate exactly what he's doing, and you don't have any experience doing that, you're going to come across as a bit incongruent, and you're going to often find yourself in your head just thinking, what do I say here? Why is he able to do it so naturally and effortlessly? And yet I'm stuck in my head thinking, why do I feel so uncomfortable? Why is this so unnatural to me? So the way I'm going to be teaching this today to you is from a place of your own starting point. And the reason we do that is because it's better to start this journey from an authentic place, because that is going to get you the farthest in any interaction with anybody, and also in your own personal confidence and development, than absolutely anything or any other trick someone can tell you. So always remember that it's not about becoming something you're not. It's about enhancing the aspects of yourself that are already desirable, that you may not recognize quite yet. It's about enhancing the traits that you have yet to discover, because you've never put yourself in that situation to where you can actually allow them to express themselves. And it's not as hard as it sounds, actually. If many of you might be coming from a starting point of feeling like you're hopeless and lost in conversations and shy and anxious, some of the things I'm going to share with you today are very simple things you can add to your life to create a foundational default state that's much more conducive to you actually opening those channels of self-expression and being yourself, but the more enhanced, confident version of yourself. So I'm really looking forward to diving into those topics today. And I would also like to thank you guys for all of your questions. There were some phenomenal questions. I'm going to do my best to cover most of those questions in the content. And then at the very end, we're going to have another Q&A session where we can maybe address some of the ones that I didn't get to, or if you feel like I haven't addressed what you were hoping to get out of this, we can spend some time at the end focusing on that. And then at the end of this, the goal is to just leave you all feeling much more optimistic about your future. Instead of feeling like this is just a lost cause and you've heard a lot of things before, just understanding that your future can look different when you're living from a default state of presence. And that's a huge foundational concept that we'll get into. So take some notes, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show that we have for you today, because it's awesome. And again, Doc Farhan's here. He'll be available in the end if you guys have any questions. He actually worked for RSD in the past, helping out with a lot of in-field workshops. So phenomenal resource for you guys to have. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Sound good to everybody? Awesome. So how do we discover who we truly are and start building confidence from that perspective? Well, you really have to bring your awareness to more of a present evaluative perspective. And what I mean by that is being able to step back, shut off the thoughts in your mind and just relax and allow yourself to look at who you are. Now, I'm going to ask you a question in just a moment, and I'd like you to just maybe type in the chat or think to yourself silently, what's the first thing that comes to mind? And that question I'm going to ask you is this: who are you? Now, I'll give you a second to come up with an answer, and then I'll go from there. Now, a couple follow-up questions for that. Show of hands. How many of you answered with your job or your career? Trying to look at everybody. Okay, I'm sure a few people raised their hand for that. How many of you answered in your mind a condensed story of how you got to where you are right now? Now we're getting somewhere. And how many of you answered with a role that you play in your life? Like, for example, a father, a brother, son, a boyfriend, husband, anything like that? Now, no matter what you answered with here, just know that that's fine. That's how all of us are conditioned and programmed to believe what actually is our identity. Now, a lot of those things that I mentioned when I asked you the follow-up questions, wouldn't you say it's fair to say that those are identities or roles that you've assumed in your life, generally speaking, externally from yourself? So in other words, what I mean by that is a lot of the answers you might have given silently in your head, if you had no exposure to society. Now, this is probably an awful imagining, so just bear with me. It's just an example. Imagine if you were born in an isolated environment and you had no exposure to media, you had no exposure to television, Netflix, the external world, social media. A lot of these traits that you picked up have actually come from outside of you instead of who you actually are at the core. Now, who you actually are at the core, the true you, is something that is unique, and there's no one else like you on this planet, and I can guarantee you that. There's a sense of individuality, creativity, and strength that you have from that starting point of who you actually are. Now, a good way to imagine this as I'm walking you through this questioning exercise is imagine there's a pool of water, and at the very bottom of the pool is who you actually are. Okay, that's the core expression of who you are, your absolute identity that you may not be fully aware of yet. And on top of that, in the water's murky and it's dirty from all the dirt and soot and soil that's been poured in by media, social media, external environment, other people influencing you, maybe your parents, maybe your friends at an early age, muddying the waters so that when you're looking into this pool, you can't actually see the bottom. That's an example of the blockages and the aspects of our self externally, the false identities that society has placed preventing us from seeing and feeling and expressing who we truly are. And that's okay. Everyone has a way of experiencing that in their own right. And I'm not telling you to fight it because that'd be awfully hard to do, especially with the structured society we live in today. But what I'd like you to really do is just tap into the feeling, not the thoughts, not the mental images or the pictures. And don't overthink this. Just allow yourself to relax a little bit and focus on who you actually are at the core, the self expression of you. Now, a good way to find out who you are at the core, if I'm going to ask another question, is what do you want in life? Okay, so I'd like you to silently answer in your head, what do you want out of life? Now, I know that may be a tough question to answer, but don't overthink it. Just come up with the first thing that comes to mind. Remember, your brain is one of the most powerful search engine tools ever, especially when you ask it a question. So whatever comes up, just sit with it. Now, whatever that is, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question, okay? And I'm going to say it in a way where you can just insert what you just said and then come up with a new answer. And that follow-up question is, what's important to you about that? That being the thing that you just said. So for example, if you said, what I want out of life is to be the most successful version of yourself, then I would ask you, what's important about you being the most successful version of yourself? Okay. Now, to that answer or to that question, you might have answered to yourself, so that I'm not letting anyone down and I can help as many people as possible. I don't know what you answered. Whatever you answered with, I'm going to ask you another question. What's important about that to you? Now, with each round of questions I'm asking here, you're probably beginning to go deeper and deeper to more of a higher level core value that defines the driving force of who you actually are in your life and the force that you may not be aware of that's actually influencing a lot of your actions unconsciously. All right, some of you may already be there, and once you get there, you're going to know when you find that core foundational value. But just for those who aren't quite there yet, I'm going to ask it one more time. What you just answered to that last question, what's important to you about that? Now, some of you may have started at a place like being the most successful person that I could be. And by this third round, you might be at such a deeper level as serving others or loving myself or being the most authentic person I could possibly be. What we're doing here is we're using questions to dive deeper through that murky pool. We're diving down there and we're actually discovering what's at the bottom. And what's at the bottom is who you truly are. Maybe your core value is to live a long and healthy life. Maybe your core value is to explore whatever it is you're meant to learn in this lifetime as the person that you are. Whatever that is, I'd like you to write it down and remember it. And then when you begin to look at your life, you may start to notice how that driving force, that core value, has actually had a silent influence on almost every decision that you've made in your life. Now, as you begin to discover who you truly are, I'd like you to just embrace it and feel how good it feels to actually do the deep work that no one else is doing on this planet, discovering who you truly are. And the next thing I'd like you to do is be grateful that you have the ability to discover who you truly are, and you have the ability to build a strong building from a much better foundation. Not the foundation of the world as we see it that society has given us or social media, the foundation of your core self, which you can begin to build a skyscraper on top of that's much more secure and sturdy. Now, you're probably starting to get a clearer picture of who you truly are, and that's great. That's something that a lot of people don't do. And what I'd like you to do as well is begin to to love and accept yourself for who you truly are. And this will make a lot more sense when we get more into charisma and social skills. But begin to love yourself for who you truly are at the core level. And as you do that, I'd like you to just look at your future for a second in your mind. And I'd like you to just think of how much brighter it can be when you're operating from a place of authenticity, of congruency, in who you truly are. And as you do that, I'd like you to imagine yourself in situations where challenges or hardships may come up. How easy is it for you to just overcome those challenges? And how hard is it for them to affect you when you're operating from this place of authenticity? Now, whatever comes up, just let that sit with you for a second. Now, this is something that is going to take more than the exercise that I just walked through. This is something that whatever you wrote down for that first core value, I'd like you to keep that close by and start reflecting on it in the coming weeks. And when you do that, what's going to happen is you'll begin to purify that pool, to go back to the metaphor. So the true you becomes clearer and clearer. Maybe right now you only see a portion of it. But as you continue to reflect on this core driving force and what you really want out of life and who you truly are at a core foundational level, you're going to begin to see more and more of that pool floor. And it's going to become more and more clear to you the more you actually go into your thoughts and feelings and just discover who you truly are. Now, some other things that I'm going to share with you as well that have multiple benefits, including getting over anxiety, social anxiety especially, that are also really good at helping you discover who you truly are, is meditation, namely body awareness meditation. Because what that allows you to do is feel all the feelings and sensations on your body, to develop and tune your awareness skills so you can begin to recognize when something doesn't feel right to you, when something doesn't feel congruent. Now, just like many of you, one thing I struggled with when I was doing this exercise for myself in my own life was I've always been a very logical thinker, right? I've always been like, this has to make sense. What's step one? What's step two? What's step three? And I just sort of overthought it. And I would make decisions logically instead of emotionally. What I'd like you to start doing is make decisions emotionally. What feels right? What are things that you might have done that made sense logically, but they didn't feel right emotionally? That's the compass that's going to guide you to who you truly are at the core level. That's going to give you the hints and clues that are going to point you in the direction of who you actually are and where you're supposed to go in life. And what we're doing here, guys, this is the end goal for what we're doing here is creating a new future for you that's much more effortless, and it's much more conducive to allowing you to be in a flow state where you could just express yourself and just do what feels right. Follow your heart, follow your true desires. And that's going to allow you to be more happy as you fully embrace that aspect of yourself and you discover it to a greater extent. You know, there's some principles of the mind that we can talk about for a second that contribute to a lot of resistance. And probably the most powerful one that I'll bring up first is your mind is always going to move towards familiarity. It's always going to move towards comfort. Now, many of you have heard this before. It's no surprise. The reason that actually is, though, is because your brain it's not trying to do a bad thing by it. It has good intentions. It's trying to conserve your cognitive resources. It wants you to remain in those patterns of familiarity, because when something's unfamiliar, don't you have to pay attention a lot more? Don't you have to focus a lot more and think a lot more when you start to discover it? So don't be mad. Like one thing I noticed that a lot of people do when they're doing deep work like this that I don't really find beneficial is they view this as a battle. I'm fighting against my inner demons. I'm fighting against the resistance. And I would just ask you to release that thought for a second and just consider how much easier it is to just accept something and let it go on its own instead of resisting and fighting. Because haven't you noticed that in any interaction or thing in your life, when you push, that thing pushes back? It's the universal law of duality to a certain extent. There's on and off, black and white, uh, day and night. It's just a universal principle that it really doesn't make sense for you to fight with, because you really can't win that battle. Instead, if you just accept certain things, and when I say accept, I don't mean be okay with it and just continue living that way. What I mean is viewing it from a present perspective, understanding that that doesn't serve you, and then just releasing it, just letting go. And this is actually how you remove a lot of the blockages. You see, you're not going to discover the blockages until you start to do the deep work, until you start to dive down and understand who you truly are and what in your life is currently not aligned with that. And at that point, you can begin to make those extremely powerful changes of letting go and feeling like the 10,000-pound weight, the burden, the incongruity that's been making you feel so weighed down, so frustrated, so dissatisfied with your current life can just be lifted off of you and gone forever. And just consider how much more free and lightly you can move through the world without that burden on top of you when you come from this place of presence and releasing anything that's not conducive to the ultimate core value that you want in life. Things become a lot simpler when we view it from this way, don't they? So that's a good example of how you can begin to establish the knowing of who you truly are and start slowly but surely further discovering it. This is the journey of self-discovery. And in my opinion, this is the journey of life. This is why we're here, to understand, to wake up to who we truly are at a core level and see through the illusions, see through the stuff that's not coming from us, see through the stuff that's coming from our external reality, and actually isolate to viewing it from an internal reality, our unique subjective experience of the world. It's very powerful stuff. And one thing you'll notice as you start to do this week by week is you're just going to be happier and more optimistic about life. And you're just going to feel so much lighter and so much less weighed down and have this ability to just flow. You're like Lucy, you know, you just flow. There's no other way to describe it. It feels so good. So that's where we're going to start from, guys. And I hope you started to get some aha moments or revelations. Maybe we could talk about those in the Q&A if you want to go deeper into that. But I want to talk a little bit about confidence now from an authentic perspective, if that's okay with everybody. So I know there was a few questions, so this is a good place for us to pick off from here on how would I define confidence? What exactly is it? Well, the word confidence actually comes from a Latin word called fidere, which means to trust fully. And to simplify confidence as a whole, you could say that self-confidence simply means that you just trust yourself fully. And when I say trust yourself fully, I mean trusting that core value, the person who you actually are at a foundational level that hasn't been influenced and manipulated by your external world. And this doesn't mean that you have to be something you're not, as I said before. This doesn't mean that you have to be, and again, like if this word serves you, keep it, a quote unquote alpha male. You know what I mean? Like if that word serves you in your journey of developing confidence, keep it. But if it doesn't, I would just say release it. It's just being comfortable in yourself, loving yourself, and releasing any external idea of what that means for you, because you have your own way of experiencing the world. And someone's definition of confidence may be congruent with them in the way they see the world, but maybe it's not congruent with you in the way you see the world. So what I'm getting at here is confidence is really going to be different for everybody in the way that you define it. And there's some commonalities that we can explore in greater detail here, but it's really something you discover. You discover what confidence means to you. Another aspect of confidence that's incredibly powerful and extremely beneficial when it comes to improving your social abilities and expressing yourself as you truly are is that confident people are okay with uncertainty. One thing we can say that's, I'm sure all of you would agree with, is that anxious people tend to crave certainty about everything. And they tend to ask themselves questions like, what if this happens? What if that happens? And that actually prevents them from taking any action, and they find themselves stuck and frozen in life. But it's not liking uncertainty. You don't have to like uncertainty. In fact, maybe you never will. You just have to be okay with it. You just have to trust yourself enough to be able to comfortably face uncertainty. Because, guys, is it fair to say that uncertainty is something that is always going to be alive in life? I mean, you can't be certain of everything. And even if you could, you might actually find that life would be incredibly boring, because that would mean that you know everything that's going to come next. And you'd probably be, totally bored and not really appreciate life. So uncertainty is a good thing. You don't have to like it. You just have to be okay with it. So I'd like you to just consider how you can actually, instead of fighting uncertainty, just comfortably relax with it. It doesn't have to be your friend, but it can just be something that you know exists, something that you're not fighting against. You just move through the world, maybe acknowledging that it exists, but not necessarily giving it too much attention. I mean, if you're going into a situation where you have a date with a girl, or maybe a job interview, is it fair to say that there's absolutely no way prior to that that you could figure out how that's going to go? I mean, if you do, let me know. I'd love to have someone to just tell me what's going to happen next, someone who's psychic. But I mean, it's fair to say that you can't do that. So why fight it, right? Why push against? Remember what I said about the law of duality. Whatever you push against is going to push back. And that's a battle that will never end, and it's a battle you can't win. So just be comfortable with it. Now, another example of this could be if you're going to a party and you don't really know that many people, or maybe you only know one person there. And I've been in this situation a lot as I was overcoming shyness. I would tend to worry beforehand about, what if the friend that I have like goes to the bathroom for a second? And I know that sounds hilarious, but like I had these really detailed imaginings. Like I guess I would almost give myself credit for how creative my anxiety was at the time. But what am I going to say to other people? Like, how am I going to feel just standing there by myself? Because when I was anxious and shy, there was even no thought of me like talking to other people. I mean, what a thought, right? So, I mean, you can start to see how this kind of worrying is really just self-defeating, because the more you worry, the less confident, the less sure about yourself you're going to feel. So instead of doing that, you can just trust that you'll respond spontaneously to the social situation as it develops. And what I call this is trusting your unconscious mind. And this is a really powerful principle that we're also going to revisit when we talk about never running out of stuff to say. It's trusting your unconscious mind. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, there's tasks you do with your unconscious mind that you just know how to do. You don't doubt or question your ability to do it. Let me give you an example. If I were to blow dust or sand in your eyes know to blink to protect your eyes. They just know how to do that. That's your subconscious executing a process that you don't have to question, because you just know that it's going to react that way. And if you eat food, you know your body's going to digest it. You don't really have to question, oh my God, what if it doesn't go down my esophagus properly and all the stomach acid doesn't affect it properly and I die? I mean, I'm pretty sure none of you guys are worried about that. So just know that you have a storehouse, you have a mega storehouse of unconscious learnings within you. If you really start to think about it, I mean, for example, if any of you have rode a bike before, is it fair to say that if you've done it since you were a kid, you could do it very comfortably and just not overthink it? It's just something you do. Or driving a car is another great example. When many of us first started driving a car, we were unconsciously incompetent about it. We didn't know how to do it. So we were stiff in our head and we kind of overthought it. But now that we've done it enough, it's become an unconscious process. And to revisit the principle I said earlier about the brain always moving towards familiarity, this is leveraging that principle for your advantage. When you do something enough times, your brain can begin to allow your unconscious mind to take up that process instead of your conscious mind. And that's when you get to the point of being smooth and effortless in everything you do, whether that be conversation with people. The more you do it, the more of an unconscious process it becomes. And the less worried about what you're going to say next you're thinking about. I mean, there's so many times where you can instinctively trust yourself. To bring that another example in more of a social context, think about when you see a really good friend of yours, and or maybe a friend in the past, someone who was like your best friend as a kid. Think of how when you're in their presence, you just respond. You're not really thinking too much about what you're going to say. I mean, you might have a few thoughts here and there, but you're not thinking like, oh my God, what am I going to say next? What will he think if I do this? Because if they're really your friend and you've spent enough time with them, your unconscious mind is just going to take up that process, and it's just going to feel smooth and effortless. And it's not something you really have to think about. And what you'll find as you do that is good content just comes up. And what enhances that further, and we'll get into this a little bit later, is when you build the foundational traits of someone who's confident and charismatic, you're giving an instruction manual to your unconscious mind on what to say to be conversational, what to say to be charismatic, what to say to express confidence. So the point I'm getting at here is we don't want to overthink any of these things, and there is going to be some work involved in the beginning. Just like when you first started driving a car, just like when you first started riding a bike, or even as a baby, just learning how to eat. You have to do things multiple times, and I'll get into some mental reframes on how you can make that process easier and feel less nerve-wracking. Another thing about confidence that's almost a little unusual is when you're feeling truly confident, you don't give confidence a second thought. In fact, when you're feeling and behaving confidently, you don't think about yourself at all, because you're just trusting yourself in that moment, and you get on with things, and it's no big deal. You just do whatever task you're doing when you reach that level of confidence. Another thing that may surprise you as well, and I know many of you may be thinking that when people see you, they view you, they look at you and say like, oh, that person's not confident, or oh, that person looks anxious. Something that might surprise you is there was actually a study done in 2010, which involved participants from 4 different countries. Now, in this study, each person was asked to fill in a personality questionnaire about themselves, and then one of their friends was asked to fill out the same questionnaire about them. So it was eliciting their friends' opinions about them. The study found that time and time again, no matter what country the participants came from, people tend to think of themselves as less assertive and confident, whereas their friends rated them as more assertive and confident. So what I'm trying to get at here is you may actually be confident, you're just not recognizing it. We just need to bring your awareness to the aspects of yourself that are already confident. And in order to feel more confident in yourself, you simply need to learn to relax with uncertainty and to trust your unconscious mind. Just like a salmon swims up a river, and this is just something salmons do, they swim upstream against the river. Just like they do that without questioning themselves in the process of swimming, thinking to themselves, why am I going against the current? Does this even make sense? What's even up the river? No, they just do it. They trust their unconscious. And just like they do that, you can learn to be in a state of flow where you unconsciously trust that no matter what happens, you'll be all right. You'll be okay. And that is the power of owning who you are, loving who you are, and trusting your unconscious mind, which is something that comes when you truly love and accept yourself no matter what. It's a very, very powerful principle. And so those are just a few foundational principles of confidence. And another thing I'd like to bring up on that note is what prevents a lot of us from seeing these traits of confidence that we already have. And a lot of that is what we focus on. what our brains focus on, what our disposition is. There's a neuroscientist named Dr. Joseph Riggio, who he has books you can buy. Extremely interesting guy, who came up with a principle that he calls the excitatory bias and the inhibitory bias. And what the excitatory bias is when you're in a disposition of openness, or you could almost say positivity. What are possibilities here? What are things I can do here? It's never viewing that you're stuck and closed off, because that would be the inhibitory bias, when you have that disposition of being closed off to anything. And when you're in the inhibitory bias, your minds tend to asking you questions. How can I get out of this? And when I learned that principle, what I began to realize was, when I was viewing my confidence prior to knowing this principle, I was viewing it from the inhibitory bias. I was thinking, how can I get myself out of not being confident? How can I get myself away from being shy? How can I get myself away from anxiety? When instead, if you're in the excitatory, you're going to see the options in front of you. You're going to see the possibilities in any interaction. Where can I go with this? You're never going to see the end of the road. And so if you just make that very simple shift that you can actually elicit within yourself by just imagining a time, maybe when you were much younger, where you just truly felt like the possibilities were endless. Maybe this was before you had the chance to get into school and start comparing yourself to other people. Maybe this was just you in your backyard playing soccer, and you were thinking to yourself, God, I could do anything. I could be a professional athlete. I could be this, I could be that. As you think of that, you're beginning to switch on your excitatory bias. And when you start to view the world and move through the world in this capacity, you're going to begin to see all the opportunities for you to improve your confidence. You're going to begin to see the good in the world, the good that's all around you, the positive aspects and traits of yourself that you already have. Another way of putting this is, it's working with your reticular activating system, or your RAS. I'm sure that's something many of you have heard of before. But basically what the reticular activating system does is it brings to our awareness what we've been feeding it or focusing and thinking on quite a bit. A good example of that could be, let's say you're thinking about buying a red Corvette, and you're doing research online, you're reading articles about it, you're reading the Carfax, you're constantly seeing images of different variations of that car. What you're not aware of in that moment is, as you look at those images, you're imprinting that idea of the red Corvette in your unconscious mind. And your reticular activating system is bringing that to your awareness, because what you might find if you do that is, the next time you drive on the road, you're going to start seeing that car everywhere. You're going to start seeing a red Corvette and be like, geez, do I even still want this car? Everybody has this damn car. I mean, it brings to your awareness what you focus your attention on the most. And that's why people do things like vision boards, where they look at them every single day when they're in a more susceptible state, to imprint that into their unconscious mind. And if you resonate with that, that's something you can do to begin to tune your reticular activating system to more positive things, to put things in your pre-conscious mind, which are basically planting seeds of expectation that good things are going to happen. It becomes much easier to reach confidence, because you're in the excitatory bias, and your reticular activating system is going to be constantly showing you good things all around you. It's going to show you all the opportunities for you to talk to someone, and the outcome's going to go well. It's going to show you all the opportunities where you can, do this deep work and just work on yourself and feel better about yourself. So it's almost like flipping a switch from negativity to positivity, and tuning your mind into the things that are actually going to help you reach your goal, right? Because I'm sure a lot of people feel stuck when they're on this journey. The trick to that is flipping the switch in the opposite direction, tuning your RAS to the good things all around you. And that's very, very powerful when it comes to conversational abilities and charisma. So that's just a little bit on some of the simple tips and tricks you can do with your mind to start from a better place. Now, let's talk for a second about anxiety, because I know another blockage and what we're doing here. Trust me, guys, we'll get to the good charisma shit, but I want to get rid of some of the blockages first, like maybe where you view yourself and your identity, what you're focusing on. And that's why we're focusing on the blockages now. And once we've shared tools with you to remove those, we can get into the foundational principles. But anxiety, really, the thing about anxiety that's almost a good thing is no matter what type of anxiety, no matter what it's coming from, it tends to follow the same process every single time. I mean, you could generally say that anxiety is a feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease, typically about an imminent event or something with an uncertain outcome. So, uncertainty being the common theme associated with types of questions that are generally focused on what if this happens? What if I approach the girl and she blows me out in that public environment where people are going to see me get blown out? What are they going to think of me? It's when you start to get in that questioning model, the negative feedback loop, that's really not going to help you. It's not going to serve you. It leads to catastrophic thoughts and imaginings on what could happen. Now, if we look at the neuroscience behind anxiety, there's an important distinction that I'd like you to make before we actually do that. And that is the emotion of anxiety is what you feel and how you feel. The physical changes are how your body reacts. So, generally speaking, anxiety happens in the mind and it causes physical changes in your body. It causes your body to react a certain way. And the part of your nervous system that's turned on when your brain starts to take you into a state of anxiety is the sympathetic nervous system. And that's the part of the nervous system that's associated with the fight, flight, or freeze response. Now, that's a part of our brain that, some people may think, like, why do we have that? Like, there's not as many imminent dangers and threats in our society today. Well, it really came from a survival perspective. In caveman times, for example, this part of your nervous system could save your life. What I mean by that is, imagine you're walking down, just in a field, and you see someone get attacked and killed by a saber-toothed tiger. It's pretty useful for your brain to get into the fight, flight, or freeze response so you can get out of that dangerous situation and save your life. But that part of our brain really hasn't evolved too much. It's kind of stayed the same. And we really need to realize and recognize that there's really not as many dangerous and imminent threats all around us. And so we don't really have to acknowledge that part of the brain as much anymore. Now, the part of the nervous system that's associated with rest and relaxation, the one that we're going to want to tune on more, is the parasympathetic nervous system. And it's generally tapped into when you're resting or relaxing, or you're in a safe environment, maybe before you're going to sleep. And basically, that's the part of the nervous system that you're going to want to focus on. And I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. How to build new neural pathways. You see, there's a principle called neuroplasticity, and it's a really exciting development. I'm sure many of you have heard of it before, which means that we can actually create new neural pathways or new brain mechanisms and patterns in our mind of new physiological states, because you see a lot of the associations we have with anxiety are reinforced over time. You can almost imagine it as if you're flowing a river over a flat piece of rock, it's eventually going to erode and create more of a deeper river, and it's going to widen. And this is why rivers in nature are so wide. When you have a constant repetitive anxiety response, like for example, when you see women and there's a situation where maybe your friends are pressuring you to approach one and your anxiety is triggered, that's a neural pathway. But the good news is we can create new neural pathways for us to respond differently in situations where anxiety might come up. And the way we can do that is focusing on our physiology, our body, how we feel. Because remember what I said earlier, anxiety tends to start at the brain and move into the body. But you know what's interesting? You can start a physiology or a feeling or emotion in the body by the way you're placing your body, by things you're doing to affect your physiology, like breathing or meditating. You can enter the back door and change your physiology to be relaxed, and then your mind will relax. So it's really another way of accessing where this anxiety is coming from and shutting it down. And the way we do that is by shifting our physiology. And some of the ways we can do that are breathing. Probably the most powerful and easily noticeable way we do that is breathing. And this is primarily why I'm also a breathwork instructor. Is early on I realized the power of breathwork in changing my physiology to a more relaxed and flow state one was unmatched. I mean, what else can you do in 5 to 10 minutes and feel immediate relief or results? So when we do something like breathing, for example, like breath work, and I'll share a really quick technique you can do in just a moment, that's very simple and you could do it at any time. When we breathe, we're shifting the state that our body's in. And the state that you're in is the sum total of everything that's going on in your mind and body at that exact moment. So that includes things like your general health, your energy level, your thinking, beliefs, confidence, what you're telling yourself, etc. And I mean, state's generally determined by how well you do something in any given moment. But remember, if we affect the physiology, we can affect the state. Something I'd like you to remember about this is emotions follow motion. And the motion that we're doing in this case that will affect your physiology most powerfully is breathing. So breathing is going to activate your parasympathetic nervous system, and it's going to get you in that more relaxed disposition. And when we do things like breathing every single day, what we're doing is we're creating those new neural pathways to change our disposition that maybe today is more of an anxious, nervous one into more of a relaxed, calm, and just present one. And throughout this process of breathing, if you begin to do it every day, you're going to notice shifts from the first time you do it, of feeling less nervous. And when you keep doing this day after day, around 30 days, I would say, is when you start to notice the new neural pathways. And the way you can notice it is your new disposition of being more relaxed and comfortable, generally speaking, in new situations. So, what's a really simple breathing technique we can give here to you guys that you can do anytime, maybe before a situation where you're going to be nervous, or maybe just start doing this in the mornings? Well, one of my favorite ones that I'm sure many of you haven't heard of, there's things like box breathing that I'm sure many of you have, and that's another excellent one. But the one I'm going to tell you about is called the 7-Eleven breathing technique. Now, we're not talking about convenience stores here, so what exactly is this? Well, it's essentially slowly and gently taking an inhale for a 7 count in through your mouth or your nose, whatever's more comfortable, and then slowly exhaling for an 11 count. Now, why do we exhale slowly? Well, breath work has been studied and research has generally caught up with it. And they've found that slow exhalations are extremely helpful for removing anxiety. So if you want to follow along with me for a moment, we could just do a few repetitions of this here, just so you understand it and you're comfortable with it. So to begin, just allow yourself to relax, just return to the present moment and inhale for a 7 count. So exhale for 11. Now, how do you feel? It's that simple, guys, and that's why breathing is one of the most immediate and quick shifts you can make in your life right now. And um, if you find that like you're having to think too much, just forget the 7-Eleven. Just take an inhale and make sure that your exhale is longer than your inhale. And you can increase those numbers like the 8-12 or the 9-13 pattern. Just start to play around with that. And I mean, we only did 3 breaths, and I don't know about you, but I'm already starting to notice my state shifting into more of a relaxed one. So that's the very powerful thing you can do there. On a similar note, there's a ton of forms of meditation, and the one I'm about to tell you about maybe not be anything new to you, but I found this to be extremely helpful in getting me into a super aware and relaxed state, especially prior to approaching anyone for a conversation, is awareness meditation. So just focusing on the feelings of your body and scanning it. So for example, just closing your eyes and imagining someone's pouring warm honey over your head. And as they do that, you can just feel as the warm honey moves down, you're scanning every inch of your body, going down, going down, all the way down to your toes. Now, it's going to take longer than the example I just gave you, but what that does is it heightens your sensory awareness over time, which is going to get you really, really good in conversation and more conversationally intelligent. And I think with that note, it'd be a good place for us to shift into the actual tips and tricks for generating charisma. Talking about charisma a little bit and how you can improve it. So, charisma is another thing, kind of like confidence, where everyone's going to sort of have a different definition of it. I think most of us would agree that we tend to view it as a special quality that some people possess that allows them to relate to and inspire others at a deep emotional level. Something that's interesting, though, is charisma has actually been studied in fields like sociology, psychology, political science, communication, and other disciplines. And the commonality out of all those different disciplines is no one really generally agrees upon a definition of charisma because it's kind of defined by the it's in the eyes of the beholder, the person who's experiencing it, based on the person they're talking to. But the thing they found is that people can easily notice when someone possesses it. Now, I'm sure all of you have seen that super charismatic person or been in the presence of someone that is just so damn interesting. Like you don't know why, but you're just finding yourself very bought into the conversation you're having with them. You're feeling relaxed. You're feeling good feelings, and there's a science behind that we'll get into. I mean, some good examples from history and acting would be Winston Churchill, who helped inspire the UK through World War II, John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, a lot of Hollywood stars like Johnny Depp. He's an excellent example of it. Or Robert Downey Jr. in Iron Man. He's a phenomenal example of charisma that you can begin to model and learn from. Now, there's a lot of theories on charisma and the studies that have been done on it. But some of the common themes that we can focus on are the charismatic individual's ability to attract attention, their ability to communicate effectively, and their ability to focus on or to affect others at an emotional level. So to make people around them feel good. And this, in my opinion, is what animal magnetism is. And I'll get into in just a moment how you can actually develop that within yourself. But really quickly, let me talk about a study that was done in charisma that's going to be really beneficial for you to understand because it really simplifies it for us to dissect even further. Now, at the University of Hertfordshire in England, there was a professor named Dr. Richard Wiseman, and he did a study on charisma. And in this study, he focused on people entering a national competition called FameLab, where people competed to be the new faces of science and engineering through making public presentations of scientific ideas. So almost like Shark Tank, they're doing a pitch, but for their scientific ideas. Now, what Dr. Wiseman found was that the people who got the furthest in the competition, they all had different styles of presenting their own individual quirks and eccentricities, but the one thing they had in common was their ability to express and transmit emotion. In conclusion, he concluded the study by defining charisma as having three fundamental qualities. Number one, the ability to feel emotion fully and strongly. Number two, the ability to induce emotion in others. And number three, the ability to be impervious to other charismatic people or anybody else. Now, what does being impervious mean? It means you're in such a powerful state that other people's opinions or feedback cannot affect how you feel about yourself and the effect you have on other people. How many of you have been in a situation where you're feeling great, you finally like jacked up your physiological state, And then you go approach a girl and you have one negative interaction, and that entire frame of feeling confident is just shattered. It's just crushed immediately. I'm sure many of you can relate to this. The way to overcome that is building a more powerful, authentic frame, like what I discussed in How to Be Authentically Confident, that's impenetrable, so that no matter what feedback you're getting from people, they can't change how good you feel. They can't put you in a negative state because they're feeling negative. You just do your own thing and you give off these good feelings and make people feel great. So, I mean, we could really say at this point that charisma is just about being an emotional leader, being able to lead the emotional state of another person or maybe a group, and to hold your emotional state so strongly that regardless of what mood anyone else is, you gradually draw them into being the same mood as you. You project emotions and good feelings that allow them to just feel good in your presence. Now, to get into the anatomy of conversation for a second, I'd like to bring up a model that I tend to live by when it comes to communication, and we'll get into why this model is so important. And that is, we're always projecting signals when we're interacting with someone. You may not realize it, but we're projecting emotions and feelings into people based on our physiology, because communication is made up of the following elements in terms of the weight they carry in your message. The words you say are only 7% effective in communicating the message that you have. Tonality is 38%, and physiology is 55%. So as you can see, it's your body language, how you're feeling, that you're projecting onto them. That's what's important. It's not about what you say to someone. It's about how you say it. And the way you begin to recognize the signals that you're projecting, and to feel the signals other people are projecting as well, like maybe they're uncomfortable with something you said, and being able to recognize that and then shift the conversation accordingly so it's smooth and you're not getting into a situation where you're not recognizing a subtle hint or maybe a not so subtle hint they're giving you. The way we tune our ability to do that is called sensory awareness, or in neurolinguistic programming, it's called sensory acuity. Now, this is one of the most common overlooked skills when it comes to masterful human communication. To define it, sensory acuity is the ability to use your senses to make accurate observations about yourself or other people. So, in other words, sensory acuity is sensory and situational awareness and being able to be aware of everything that's going on around you. Now, how many of you have seen the movie Jason Bourne, the first one, The Bourne Identity? Just a quick show of hands. There's a really good example of sensory acuity there. Now, there's a scene where Jason has recently sort of been activated as a sleeper agent, and he's in like a restaurant with the girl that he's with, and he's starting to realize like he's not the normal human, and there must be more going on, because he tells her, "I can tell you the license plate number of all 6 cars out there. I can tell the man sitting at the bar weighs 215 pounds and he knows how to handle himself. I can tell that the easiest place for me to find a gun is in the glove compartment of the red car parked outside. How would I know that?" That's an example of like super ultra tuned situational awareness. Or you could almost imagine like a monk, that imagining of a monk we have, or a ninja, so to speak. And like when someone enters the room behind them, even quietly, they can sense that and immediately turn around. That's situational awareness, and it's working with your senses to tune your awareness to be more receptive to what's going on around you. Now, the application of that in conversation is recognizing the signals you're projecting. So the state that you're in, is that an optimal state that you want to project? Or is it not an optimal state that you want to project? Are you projecting nervousness and tension? Are maybe they projecting that they're in like a closed off state, and maybe they just learned some terrible news, like maybe one of their parents died? It's the ability to sense and pick up on that so that you're more conversationally intelligent to recognize how people feel and respond. And when you begin to develop this skill, people are just going to view you as being so conversationally smart, because to simplify conversation, really, I mean, it's pretty simple. Like, people just want to feel good. If you're talking to a stranger, they want people that are going to make them feel good, and that's the charismatic person. And the way you do that is by having this frame, this emotional state that's so strong, and then just projecting it out. And this isn't something you have to think about. This is something that happens subconsciously. Project that signal out to the world and all the people around you so that they recognize that, and you can more easily capture their attention and break them out of the societal trance that they're in just walking down the street, by bringing up something interesting, something fun, something much more cool than the reality that they're currently living in, which is probably bored and mundane. Now, to develop sensory awareness, one of the easiest ways that I already touched upon is doing the awareness meditation every single day. Because when you start to become more aware of the feelings and sensations on your body, you're going to start becoming more aware of the feelings and sensations of other people's bodies. And you can actually practice this. Next time you go out, or maybe even just watching people on video, since a lot of us are in quarantine right now, see if you can identify what physiological state that person's in. Are they happy? Are they sad? Do they look like they're in a, euphoric or optimal state? Do they look closed off? Start asking yourself those questions, and what that's going to do is to tune your mind to better be able to recognize the signals that they're projecting. Are they resonating well with what you just said? Things like that. And I know this sounds like a lot. I know when I first heard it, it was. But remember, this is something your unconscious mind does. So you can almost take everything I just said and place it in the back of your mind, and just start to work on your awareness through awareness meditation every single day. And you'll just easily and naturally develop these skills on your own. So you won't have to really try too hard for that. Now, another thing I talked about was state control. So getting ourselves into the optimal state to project the traits of someone who's charismatic, to tune up the abilities that we have naturally in us and enhance those so that we're showing up as our best self in every interaction. Now, there's a state control exercise that I'd like to walk you through, but before I do that, I'd like to touch upon the 3 most powerful states that you can embody that I've discovered in my journey of learning conversation and charisma. And the first one is being playful. So, for example, when you were a kid, not having a care in the world, just goofing off with your friends, laughing, having a great time, not a care in the world, not worried about what people are thinking, just being fun and having this fun, loose energy that just is contagious, and other people get into the state as well. The second one is being confident. So having the authentic confidence and love and acceptance of who you truly are, no matter what. And then the third is being curious. So just being legitimately interested in the person that you're talking with, and try not to fake this, guys. I mean, people really are interesting. Like, you may not recognize it yet, but when you begin to go out and start talking to people, or just people that you don't know that well, and you're getting to know them better, you're going to find that there's so much more to them than meets the eye. And you can begin to become curious about who they are, what's their story, where they come from. And as you explore that state and you ask questions, you're going to get to know them better naturally. So a easy way you could put yourself into a state is a state control exercise. And I'm going to guide you through one in a moment for confidence. Now, mind you, this exercise can be used for the 2 other states that I mentioned here as well, playful and curious. But we'll start with confidence, just so you understand what to do to put yourself in a state. And I will be the first to tell you, like, this exercise takes like 2 minutes, maybe even less. So, like, it's not that hard to do. And if you begin to do it every day, your body's going to become more familiar with that state, and you can embody it even further. Almost like method acting. If you've ever looked at method acting, it's where people put themselves in the role so deeply and fully that sometimes they express traits of the people in the role when they're off the set. They're just fully immersed in that role. It's enhancing. And again, this isn't something outside of you like acting would be. This is enhancing the part of you that's confident, that's currently dormant, just awakening that for the moment so you can leverage it and use it. Now, to do a quick state control exercise, I'd like you to just close your eyes and relax. And as you do, I'd like you to imagine a time that you were feeling fully confident in your life. This could be as simple as being a kid and winning a game of Foursquare, or playing a video game as a teenager, or really anything, getting a good grade on a test. And if you're having trouble finding that, imagine someone you've met who is absolutely confident. Now, as you bring these images and memories to your awareness, I'd like you to bring yourself fully immersed in that moment where you were feeling confident. Or if you're viewing someone else, just imagine yourself entering their body. See what you would see as the confident person. Hear what you would hear. Feel what you would feel. And as you just immerse in this experience and fully embody it, I'd like you to make that feeling even stronger than before, 2 times stronger, 10 times stronger, even further. And at the very peak of feeling absolutely confident and powerful, you may begin to notice some shifts in your body. I'd like you to just press your thumb and your index finger together at the peak of confidence. Now, to break state, think of the last meal you had and return to full conscious awareness. Now, you're probably beginning to feel a little bit better, and you're probably also a little confused as to why I asked you what was the last meal you had. Well, that's really just to put you in a neutral state, because when you're practicing this exercise, you do have to do a lot of repetitions to create what's called an anchor, which in this example would be, if you did this exercise maybe 5 times every morning, you broke state, started again, and you placed the anchor, you're conditioning yourself to, whenever you press your thumb and your index finger together, to enter that physiological state of confidence. You're conditioning yourself, if you're aware of the psychology of classical conditioning. And so it's creating a nice and useful switch that you can turn on anytime that you need confidence or charisma. So start to practice that for being curious and playful as well. And we're gonna shift gears a little bit and talk about rapport, and then we're gonna talk about conversational mastery, which is, conversational strategies that you can employ that aren't difficult at all, and they really just allow you to simply show up as you truly are and build massive rapport with people. So how do we connect deeply with others? Well, the answer to that question would be, we get rapport with them. Now, what is rapport? I mean, I'm sure many of you have heard of it. It's establishing a connection with someone on a deep emotional level. So there's definitely been times where you've been in rapport in your life. I guarantee you, it could have been with, your childhood friend, where you just felt really freaking good with them and you didn't really have to think too much about what you were going to say. It's, feeling like you're on the same wavelength or frequency as someone. You resonate with them. That's a good way of describing it. And rapport is really a key element in building any relationship in life, whether that be with professional colleagues or family members or friends, and obviously women that you're trying to date, romantic partners. And rapport, a key distinction here is that it's different than liking someone. So close friendships and romantic relationships will often involve like really deep levels of rapport. But those pre-existing relationships are not necessarily required for rapport to happen. So you don't have to have that familiarity with someone already. You can establish it. An example of that would be like the Beatles, for example, the band The Beatles. They often clashed with each other off stage, but on stage, they performed perfectly and they were in this sync or rapport with one another. And they were able to do that in interviews as well, and still express this unity, even though a lot of them kind of hated each other. So what causes rapport to happen? Why don't we dive into that? Well, there was a study on rapport in 1998, published by the Journal of Nonverbal Behavior. And in that study, researchers were looking at video footage of people who had just met for the first time. And each participant was asked after their meeting how likely they would be to go on a date with the other person. that they had been speaking to. So they were basically just watching a video of men and women in a room together, and then giving them a survey after on how likely they would be to go on a date with that person. And what the researchers found was that the best nonverbal predictor of rapport in mutual attraction wasn't whether people used the same gestures as each other or adopted the same postures, but it was whether they were rhythmically in sync with one another. In other words, when one person shifted posture and the other person tended to shift into that position too, they would get more and more in sync. And when one person gestured with their hands or tilted their head, the other person responded physically in the same way, even if they made a different kind of movement. Maybe it was the same pace as the movement the other person made. And so the video footage revealed that an increasingly complex dance was taking place between the couples that were most interested in one another. And that dance was with the different rhythmic movements and patterns repeating themselves over and over again. So with that study, we can conclude that rapport is really being on the same rhythm as another person, being on the same frequency. And this also applies to the rate at which people speak. But another key aspect of rapport is letting the other person know that you're actually listening to them. And I mean really listening to them, being fully present in every interaction with them and being curious. So getting in rapport with someone is really as simple as being legitimately curious about them and being a really good listener. And also projecting signals that allow them to sense that you're someone that they can trust. So in other words, not showing up as, having this agenda in your mind where they're going to immediately put up that autopilot response and block you out. Instead, having this genuine, authentic, friendly, playful vibe that you're just projecting to them as you approach them. And that allows them to relax a little bit and not have that defense mechanism to just shoo you away like a fly. So that's kind of a rapport in a nutshell. And when I talk a little bit more about conversation mastery, which is what we're going to get to next, you're going to begin to see how easy this is. So let me take a sip real quick. So what I define communication mastery as is speaking in flow. So chaining your thoughts together in a continual rhythm that's effortless and freely flowing. And again, this doesn't mean you have to be something you're not. You don't have to immediately tomorrow be as charismatic as Robert Downey Jr. It's a step-by-step process and a journey. And the common theme is that it's authentic with you. So what I'm presenting you here is more of a framework that you can mold to who you are on the inside and what
I think Corey might have frozen. Let me know if that's the case. Okay. I think you're back.
you could hear me. And then I saw everybody's face was frozen. I was like, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah, you're back now. So you're good.
Awesome. So communication mastery, to get back to that, again, it's just being in continual rhythm. It's trusting your unconscious mind to come up with the content, and also just being aware of the state that you're in. So paying attention to the signals that you're projecting and the signals that they're projecting. It's reading her vibe, so to speak, and more like feeling it and then tuning into it. And again, that's the essence of getting into rapport. And the effect that it has is breaking someone out of this societal trance, breaking them out of the mundane. And the core principle behind the way I teach conversational mastery is you building the kind of person that is so interesting, so magnetic, so funny, so, I mean, whatever trait that you have that's already conducive to being charismatic, so much to that level that it becomes really easy to just get people to want to talk to you, to want to get to know you better. So it's very largely around the state. And basically, essentially, what you're doing here is you are creating this reality. So almost like a private reality. Again, reality is your subjective experience of the world. I have one, you guys have your own, we all have a different one. What's true to me may not be true to you. but it's you creating one so interesting, so playful, and so different that when you talk to a stranger, whether it be a girl you're trying to get to know better or a person in a business context, you're so different and interesting that you ultimately suck them into your reality. You create this this sort of a, I don't know how to describe it, maybe like a lifestyle that is just so cool, magnetic, and interesting that they just want to be around you. They just like you. They can't help it, even if they tried. And we do that through state control exercises. And I'm going to walk you through something like a really useful tool that you can do. It's called the 3 Magic Questions. That's going to allow you to build amazing rapport with women and attraction, that I got from one of the teachers I had in my journey called David Snyder. But the really the before I do that, let me tell you a story of a huge revelation I had in my journey. So as I was trying to get better with women and master this process, one thing I found was I was consuming content like it was water and I was dying of thirst, but I wasn't really taking action. And so to force myself to take action, I hired a dating coach. I went on a boot camp and I went with the company Love Systems that was formerly the Mystery Method. This was several years ago. And I show up on the first day with the dating coach. So the way it worked was in the daytime, we would go over content, and then in the nighttime would be infield. And when I first showed up, there was supposed to be 5 other guys on the boot camp besides me. And there was 2 instructors. And when I got there, I was the only one. The other guys had canceled. So I was both excited and nervous at the same time because I was like, holy shit, like I'm forced to change, but I was also excited because I knew that it would actually happen because I had skin in the game. I had paid the money. And anyways, what really was interesting to me in the infield aspect of that was I came to the realization that what you say doesn't matter and you get better the more that you do it. And what I mean by getting better is the signals you're projecting, the vibe that you're projecting out in the world that gets people to like you. For example, the most common opener I used that weekend, which is a very authentic one, and I was blown away. And the teacher gave me the idea, but I would go up to girls and I would say, "Hey, I'm Corey. I'm shy and I never talk to girls. How are you?" And then I would just give like a like insanely bright smile, and they would like most of them would just crack up. I mean, some of them would just kind of phase out. But what I noticed was the more I did this, the stronger the effect it had later on in the night. And that was the act of repetition and the act of me reinforcing my confidence in my ability to deliver it. And not only did that teach me it's not about what you say, it's about how you say it, but it also really destroyed some of the beliefs I had in my mind that I didn't have, the ability to get people interested in me like at the drop of a hat. I mean, I completely broke their state by being humorous, and a lot of them laughed, and we would play around and role plays. And essentially, I didn't even realize it at the time, but what I was doing is I was just embodying the playfulness energy. And I can't even tell you what I said after that opener because my unconscious mind just took over and I just trusted the process. So that's kind of an example of how it's not about what you say, it's about how you say it. Um, when I first heard that opener, I was like, this shit's never gonna work. Like they're just gonna think I'm like a loser. But what I soon realized was it was the way that I was delivering it. And later on in the night, it became funnier to the women because I was more confident later on in the night. And I was projecting these signals of this like fun, playful, confident frame that were saying like I'm not shy and I do talk to girls. And then I was telling them I'm shy and I never talk to girls. And then they were like, haha, that's funny, and then we would get into rapport and have amazing connection. And I mean, that weekend was absolutely amazing. And from that point on, I realized I'm not going to die in uncomfortable situations and I could really be myself. It's not about being something you're not. So when it comes to the content and conversation, it's easy to overthink it. It's easy to say, what do I say? What do I do this? What do I do that? Just get yourself out there and uh, put yourself in what I call, and this is a bit of a reframe with the act of approaching strangers, is put yourself in what I call a lighthearted social experiment. And what that is it's a reframe of the act of approaching someone. Now, you may be, studying pickup material and being like, all right, I got to approach like 5 girls a day. When you put that message in your mind of like, I got to do this, I got to approach, like I have no choice, you're going to trigger feelings of anxiety. You're going to trigger attachment to outcome. And you're probably going to project that as well. I know, the first couple of approaches when the instructor was making me approach girls, I was probably projecting that a little bit. But what I soon realized is when you reframe the act of approaching to something that's harmless, like a lighthearted social experiment, which is basically just where you're you're going out and you're doing experiments to get data. You're going out and you're opening and talking to people to see how it goes. And then you're bringing that data or the study into your unconscious mind's bank of reference experiences. And those reference experiences are going to reinforce confidence because you can do state control exercises. But if your mind doesn't have a bank of data to reference that you actually are confident, that confidence will only be temporary. So the way to build the limitless lifetime, just lifestyle confidence, where that's just who you are, is to build those reference experiences. And you can use lighthearted social experiments to do that. And what I recommend if you're doing that is this: don't only approach girls. Like if you're checking out at the grocery store, like joke around with the clerk at the grocery store. That's another principle I learned in the boot camp, which is warming up, right? Like I remember I used to before I did this boot camp, I would be on my computer all day for work, not really talking to too many people, just like typing away. And then all of a sudden I would go out to a bar or a club, and it's like no wonder I felt uncomfortable because I wasn't in that social mood. So what the instructor taught me was you got to warm up, and you can use lighthearted social experiments to start from wherever you're at and not put too much pressure on yourself because an example could be if you're like painfully shy and you're just starting from scratch, a big step for you could be just walking down the street and waving to someone, or maybe since we're in COVID, just like on the dating app, just like maybe saying a little bit more risky things than you normally would, and maybe do like a FaceTime date with them, and step by step, like things that are going to be easier for you, or maybe just joking around with the waitress at the restaurant or the clerk at the grocery store. I mean, whatever is possible for you, it's gonna move you in the right direction. And all you're doing is gathering data. So you're not gonna project signals of neediness or attachment to outcome. Instead, you're gonna project signals of presence and just playfulness and self-amusement, quite frankly, which is really powerful. So that's something I wanted to bring up is you guys got to come up with your own content, but don't overthink it. It's actually really easy when you take the pressure off because you're just gathering data. And I don't know if you're going to get a girlfriend from a lighthearted social experiment, or maybe make a really good friend, or maybe meet the next person that will give you your next job or be a business partner. You never know. There's so many interesting people out there waiting for you to talk to them and get to know them. So that's what a lighthearted social experiment is. How are we doing on time, Andre?
We are doing pretty good. I mean, whatever you want to transition to. I mean, I'm just glued to it. So let's just go all in. So you're totally good, man.
Awesome. Is this useful for you guys? You starting to get some aha moments and insights? Awesome. I see some nods and thumbs up. There we go. So the next thing I'm gonna teach you is called 3 magic questions, and I got that from one of my teachers in this journey named David Snyder, who's a neurolinguistic programming practitioner, but he was also a dating coach back in the day. I think he went under the name David Shade. Some of you may have heard that, and he's got thousands of YouTube videos that are unbelievably beneficial. I did a live training with him, so I got to meet him in person, and this was one of the most powerful techniques when it comes to connection that I got from him. So basically, what this will do is it will allow you to develop unbelievable connection, rapport, and attraction in the people that you're employing it with. And what the 3 magic questions are, sorry to disappoint you, I'm not going to give you questions to ask. It's categories of questions, which almost makes it a little bit easier to employ because there's no way you could be incongruent with how you ask it. Now, the 3 categories of questions, I'll tell you what they are, and then we'll walk through them one by one. And the strategy here is you progressively go deeper. And I'll also say probably the most useful context to use this would be in a date, like a date with a girl. So this is a way you can come across as like really interesting and make her feel like she's known you a lot longer than she actually has, so that you can, do with that relationship as you wish, and get to know her better. And so the first category is location or occasion, so contextual questions. The second is career or passion, so occupational questions. Then the third is past or childhood, so it's deeper aspects about them, getting to know them much deeper. And so some rules that I'd like you to employ when asking these questions is always ask open-ended questions. So never ask yes or no. Never ask a question that is like framed in a negative state. Always keep it positive. You know, use something that he calls the echo technique throughout the process. So, like for example, um, if she says something to you like, "Yeah, I really like it when I'm just able to cook meals and people love my food. Like I just love cooking so much," and you could just say like, echo something she said, like, "Uh-huh, yeah." So you like as she's saying that, you're saying like, "Uh-huh." So you really like to cook, and you love it when people do that. That's going to make them feel like you're listening to them much better, and you should be listening to them very well. But an example of level one question, so contextual, could be like, for example, if you're at a restaurant with the girl for a date and there's like a live band playing, you could just say, "So I was wondering, like, what do you think of the band?" Or like, "What do you think of this restaurant? Like, have you ever been here before? Um, what do you think of the food?" Just simple stuff like that. And I know that may seem like kind of like very adverse to risk, but just stay with me for a second because it develops. The level two questions that you'll progress to are career, passion, pleasure related. So, for example, you could be like, "I'm curious, what do you do for a living? And what do you like about that?" Just keep going down that conversational thread. Like, what's important to you about enjoying what you do, to sort of further build rapport. And then level three questions is the last one you get to. And you just want to be a little careful here because some people may have like traumatic experiences from childhood. So remember to phrase it positive. But you could just be like, "I'm curious, where did you grow up? Where are you from? Um, what's your most special memory from when you were a kid? Like, I bet you had this amazing childhood where you're the most popular girl in school. Just have fun and play with it. What type of extracurricular activities did you do in school?" And just continuing to do that, and sharing aspects of your story in that process can be really powerful in developing connection and rapport. And throughout this process, something I want to touch on as well is it's good to know your outcome that you want, but not to be attached to it. So to have it in the back of your head. And the reason I say that is this is if you're just talking to someone with no goal, and the goal can be really simple. It could be to amuse yourself or to get to know them better or to learn more about them. If you come without a purpose, you're going to have no end outcome. So you're just going to be, saying interesting things here and there, but not really having a clear path on how you can get there. So whatever that intention is, just keep it in the back of your mind and don't hold on to it too much. And that just tells you where to go. So just keep that in mind as well. And there's another little technique I'd like to share with you. And I'm not that big on techniques, but this is kind of just a visualization exercise that you do in your head when you're talking to someone. And you're not really thinking too much. You're just kind of imagining it. So it's called the pink bubble charisma generator. And I know that sounds like super weird and corny. You're like, "What the hell is this?" But it's basically when you're speaking with someone, you're imagining that you're both in this pink bubble together. And what that pink bubble symbolizes is the merging of your realities. It symbolizes calm connectedness, deep familiarity, deep attraction, and rapport. And just know that when you're in this pink bubble with them, they're going to feel really connected to you, and they're going to want to see you again. And I don't know if when you're in this bubble, you're going to begin to tune out of what's going on in the environment and tune into them. And you may notice that they're actually doing the same to you. And as you do that, just notice how the connection becomes so effortless and so easy. And if you are if you think that's a little woo woo, what that's basically doing is it's just tuning your mind to project certain signals. So when you're imagining the pink bubble, you're projecting signals of comfort, familiarity, of tuning out everything else. And remember what I said, when you project signals, they often respond by picking up on your signals. And if you're doing a good job in rapport, they'll get into that physiological state that you're connecting. So basically it is getting them to tune out all the other shit that's going around them and you, and to tune into you, and to just be so immersed in your reality that you're just so interesting and you're so different, quite frankly. So and that goes back into the sucking them into your reality principle. But this is, I mean, this is, I've given you guys like a ton of tools here. So maybe now would be a good time to stop and see if there's any questions. I see there's stuff in the chat.
Yeah, anyone that wants to unmute themselves, come on video, definitely ask any questions for Corey. He covered a lot of our questions I wrote down, so feel free to come on.
I would love to ask a question, Corey.
Sure.
Can you give us some guidelines for affirmations? I know it's a very different people have different thoughts about it, and like the structuring of the affirmation is so important, and how long it is and what you say first and all that. And me personally, I just got into the vision boards affirmation thing in my life, and I'm very much like I've embraced it really hard, right? And so I want to know, like, so I repeat stuff. I record it with my voice, and then I repeat it in the morning, at night. And man, it's really making a difference. I know. And being a scientist, I've always like, BS, pseudoscience, affirmation crap. But now that I am perhaps, a different person, I'm embracing things that I never respected before, because I fucking don't know, right? Who am I to judge? So yeah, man, give me some guidelines, or give us some guidelines for affirmations. Even talk about what these are for people who don't know.
Absolutely. So that's a great question. Thank you, Doc. So an affirmation is essentially a phrase that you're saying that's conducive to a certain outcome that you want to get out of it. So for example, if I want to be more confident, it's saying phrases or small collections of words that are maybe the traits of someone who's confident. So like, I am comfortable in my own skin. I am confident. I love myself no matter what. I am grateful for everything around me. Saying stuff like that with the intention of eliciting a specific physiological state in you and imprinting in your preconscious mind the thing that you're actually looking to embody in your life, planting the seeds of what it is that you want to become. And affirmations are something that's been used a long time. A lot of people don't believe that they work. They do work. And there's a key distinction on what makes them work that I'll tell you. And that is that it's not about the words you say. Don't focus as so much on the words as how they make you feel. It's about how you feel. Your unconscious mind does not work in the language of like whatever language you speak. It works in the language of images, emotions, symbolism. And so they're only going to be as powerful as you allow yourself to just get fully immersed in them and to feel the effect that they have on you. So a way to make them more powerful would be just cut off all distractions. Like, do it in an environment where you're fully focused on how they make you feel, on what the feeling they're eliciting within you is, where it's coming from, just focusing on that, because that's going to be much more powerful than focusing on the words. Because a big problem I see with focusing on the words with a lot of people is they don't believe them. Their conscious mind gets involved. And in order for them to work, you have to keep the conscious mind out of the picture and focus on the feeling and emotion. Like, for example, if someone's super shy and not wanting to, approach girls and stuff, if they say like, I love approaching girls, like I approach girls all the time, like their conscious mind, if it's active, is going to be like, bullshit, like you're terrified of approaching girls, like that's not you. So I think some people get too focused on what they're actually saying. It's just more important about how they make you feel. And this is where we get into things like self-hypnosis, which is another way of applying these that, in my opinion, makes them more powerful. And it's as simple as you just relaxing and tuning everything out and allowing yourself to just drift deeper into the present moment, maybe noticing the silence between your breaths. And as you do that, coming from a state of full relaxation and presence, and then reading the affirmations, because at that point, your conscious mind has been put to sleep. And what's called your critical factor can't get in the way and block those affirmations that it doesn't feel like they're congruent with you or not. And another thing I'd like to say about affirmations as well is another way to empower them as well is if they're not working for you in a statement format, try questions, positive questions. And the reason I say questions is because when someone asks you a question, your unconscious mind is triggered. It's scanning all the data that's collected throughout your life to come up with an answer. You may think that that's your conscious mind doing it, but it's actually your unconscious mind. And so when you ask a question like why am I so confident? Your brain is going to come up with an answer. And if you fully tuned out your conscious mind, it's not going to get involved in your brain. Your unconscious mind will come up with an answer. Maybe the first thought that pops in your head would be because I love myself. Or like, why am I so charismatic? Why do I so easily connect with people? Why do I not even have to think about what I'm saying in conversation? And actually, forget that last one, because another good thing with affirmations or questions is to avoid negations. So your unconscious mind tends to not hear not. So like try to do it as positive. So like, why am I so charismatic? Why am I so successful? Or like, how did I develop the ability for anyone to like me, no matter who I talk to? Instead of saying like, why am I not afraid to talk to people? Because what your brain's going to hear in that instance is, why am I afraid to talk to people? And you better believe it'll give you an answer, and it's not the one that you want. So those are some useful ways to look at it. Questions are huge. Questions tend to work a little bit better for me because they really activate my unconscious mind. I'll tend to only do the statement affirmations if I'm doing self-hypnosis or if I'm creating like a hypnosis audio for myself or others. But that's what I would say about affirmations. Thanks.
Very good. Anyone else? Go ahead and unmute yourself. We got a lot of beautiful faces, so let's hear what you got.
I see there's something in the chat. I think it's from Peter, and it's something I saw in the questions a lot, so I'm happy to address it. It's about how we're in COVID and how social isolation is making it almost seem like, what's the point of us developing these abilities if we're just going to be isolated inside in front of our computers? Well, the answer to that question is, we may be in isolation, and one thing we can all agree upon is we don't know what tomorrow holds. We can pretend that we do, but we don't. So why worry about what tomorrow holds? Why not just live in the present moment and appreciate what's good in our lives right now? And another thing I would say to that is, being charismatic is more about optimizing who you are at a foundational level and making yourself happier and just more positive and being sort of a force for good in the world. Because my personal mission when it comes to the charismatic context is to get people in a state where they can always leave everyone they talk to in a better place than when they found them. And I know that may not be as sexy as like, oh, approaching all these girls and getting laid all the time, but like ultimately it's about, giving back to the world and just being the best person you possibly can, no matter the situation. And because we can't control what's going to happen tomorrow and what's going on in the world today, we're better off just focus on what's good for me in this moment right now. What's true for me in this moment right now? I have enough food to survive. I have a roof over my head. I'm a part of a community that shares amazing fucking content with a bunch of supportive guys that are there for me. I'm able to wake up and be healthy. I'm not dying of a deadly disease or cancer or something. So it's really just about improving your life and your outlook on the world. And another thing I'll say is, there is going to be a new sense of normalcy. We don't know what that is. Maybe it's not going to be the same as what normal was before. But in any world, like even if we're in like a fucking, and I'm not saying we are, but even if we're in like a Mad Max type post-apocalyptic world, is it fair to say that charisma will still be beneficial in a world like that? The ability to inspire others and influence them, and in some ways, probably save your life by just being so smooth and magnetic that like people can't try to be aggressive towards you. So we don't know what tomorrow holds. We don't know what the world's going to look like, but these skills are going to be useful no matter what the world looks like.
Very good. All right. Anyone else? We have a lot of attentive people.
I would like to just add a bit of my experience with COVID. So for me, it's like running Aphro-D, for example, right? So when COVID hit, I told the team, like, don't worry about it. Just do your thing, man. Just do your thing. Like, how will you let okay, fine, it's a pandemic, whatever. Whatever the truth is, it doesn't matter to me, right? It's more about how will you let some external event affect your decision-making? Like, if you feel something so strongly in your body, will you really let any external event like make that decision different? I mean, you can be smart about it, but letting it completely control your life, like it is for most people, that's your decision. That has nothing to do with COVID, or this is just reinforcing whatever you already believed before, right? So like, for example, for Aphro-D, right? A lot of companies out there struggled. We're a startup. We're 3 years since we started, and a lot of people like, oh, we're gonna struggle and this, and then I'm like, no, there is no struggle. This will be good for us. This will be amazing for us. I don't know how, but it just will be, because we're amazing people. And during those 4 months of like crazy COVID, we grew like 5x. Like literally 5x growth in Aphro-D. Why? Because, well, I didn't let that affect me, right? And the same thing about what Peter asked. Like, you can't let that affect you. You almost have to take it as an advantage, because now everyone has fear. Everyone has these types of thoughts. So if you're different, then you have a real advantage, because now you are the leader, because you're not like anyone else, right? So like my gym, for example, right across the street, at most gyms in my life, before I joined this one, I always was like the lord of the gym. Like I would always just like, everyone knew me, I knew everyone. I would just like be that guy at the gym, that like the popular guy. And when I came here, it's Vancouver, people are very like muted, kind of like shy, kind of like that type of thing. And I was like, okay, this is an environment, but now I'm going to be even more of a lord at the gym, because now I'm going to be able to like show them how they should be in life. Human fucking beings, not robots, and not like letting other people make their decision. So now I'm the lord of this gym too. Why? Because I didn't let some external situation affect who I am at my core, right? And that's what Corey was helping us do, get that core belief, that core, like who you are at your deepest level. So yeah, man, I think it's all excuses, Peter, to answer your question. To be honest, it's just excuses, because I make those excuses in myself too. And then I catch myself and say, nope, it's a negative loop that you're just gonna go into, and you have to turn it into a positive loop and keep feeding yourself through like affirmations and what Corey taught us today. So that's my 2 cents for that. I will never ever give into a single excuse in this situation.
Well said. Well said. Yeah, and it goes back to that pool metaphor. The core use at the bottom. All the media, scare agenda shit, that's the muddy water on top. Just stop watching the news. I mean, I know sometimes it's hitting you in the face. Like I think you're at a university right now, and you're, obviously you're feeling the effects because now classes are online, but that doesn't change who you truly are. Like there's still good in that situation. And the only people that this pandemic is really fucking with are the people who are allowing it to put them in this fear consciousness, and not the people that, like Doc Farhan said, are just continuing in their life, like focusing on the opportunities in front of them in the moment and not focusing on the changes, or maybe the disappointment that something was the way it was before and now it's not that way anymore. So it's just about moving through the world, being impervious and never forgetting who you truly are and living aligned with that.
Absolutely. All right. Last call for anyone else to come on. Feel free.
I think there was if no one has a question, I was just pulling up the responses that you guys put in the forum. And
Yeah.
I think someone asked me about the Robert Cialdini principles of influence and how they can be used in charisma. If no one has any questions, I'm happy to really quickly bring that up.
Yeah, let's go over that for just the last topic, and then that'll
Sure.
be great.
Yeah, definitely. So you know, that's a great book, by the way. The funny thing is I actually haven't read it, and it's because so many people have read that book that there's awesome like summaries of it online. So I've definitely tuned into the principles of influence and the reciprocity principle. So the example of people feeling obligated to do something nice for you because you've done it for them. An example of that in a conversational context would be you projecting such good vibes and putting them in such a good state, just based on your presence and the way you're showing up in the world, is going to make them compelled to just want to do something nice for you, or like want to progress with you if you ask them, you know, to, if they want to like grab coffee after that. So that's an example of that. I'm trying to think what else. Social proof is pretty powerful too, like especially if you're meeting a girl in a social circle context, like through a friend. I mean, if your friends love you and they think you're a really cool person and they know this girl that's awesome, I mean, their credibility is going to immediately disarm any worry she might have of like you being a creep or you being like a weirdo. It's going to give you a lot of an advantage going into it. The liking principle, in my opinion, is charismatic. People that like to be, you know, people that are similar to them, that get them, being able to connect with them on their interests and hobbies. And then the authority principle, I would say, is just being a leader in the interaction, like progressing it how you want it to progress. Like, for example, if you like her, you like what you see, asking for her number and then progressing it through text, leading into a date, and always picking the place. And then scarcity would just be your detachment from outcome, right? Like in a sales context, it's just like, all right, the price isn't good enough, I'm walking away, I'll see you later. But in the charisma and conversational context, it's just you being so detached from the outcome that like you don't care if you know, you don't care if she responds to you negatively. Like you're just walking away that like, all right, she's not the one for me, let's move on. Like it's your detachment from outcome that helps them be like, well, wait a second, like he doesn't seem as attached as the other guys, like what's different about him? So that's how that principle would work. So I mean, they can really be applied in any aspect of life. I thought that was an interesting question, whoever asked that.
I think that was Peter as well. Peter's been quite a boss with our questions.
Nice. Yeah, definitely. Any other questions?
Okay. Well, Farhan, I think you let me know you had some things you wanted to mention.
Yeah. So I'll let Andre end, but before I pass it on to him, I just want to thank Corey for this amazing masterclass. You know, like Corey has gone through an entire life of transformation, and the goal that he gave us here, and I would urge a lot of you who got a lot out of this to rewatch it, and like really, like, you know, just once you watch something a second time, it really hits you, and then you watch it a third time, it hits you harder. It's like watching a movie at different times in your life. So I mean, Corey, thanks so much, man. Round of applause. I know you could probably only hear my clap, but thanks so much, man. It was outstanding.
Awesome.
And I also, for those of you who are for the next masterclass, I want to give some tips to get more out of it. Leaving your camera on, for those of you who can, I know some of you don't have webcams, that's fine, but leaving your camera on gives this vibe of brotherhood that, you know, we are like in a masterclass together, like we're in a stadium cheering for Corey as he scores a touchdown. You know, it's like, it's super cool. So I would like to see everyone in this gallery, you know, show your face, and it doesn't matter if it's dark or I don't know, who cares? Just have your window open so we can like be in the energy together. Okay, someone's saying something.
Definitely.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So that's what I would urge. And also, I want to give a shout out to our coaching program. So a lot of you may not be aware of this, but we now have a team of coaches, and I'm one of them. And we coach guys on different aspects of, you know, whatever you're facing in life. The only thing is it's only for very serious people. Like, our coaching program is very intense. It's if you have a serious issue that you're dealing with, right? Because Aphro-D, the supplement, is a starting point. It's something you use, you know, for your health. But if you're facing something deeper than that, maybe it's a performance issue in the bedroom, or it's a confidence issue, or if you really want to lose a lot of weight and a lot of fat in a you know 3-month time frame, whatever that problem is, you know, it usually it is a testosterone related thing, but it's something deeper. If you would like to get coached, we have a team of coaches, and we all coach you together. There's nothing like this in the world. And if you are interested, then all you have to do is email me. I'll put my email address here. And I'll put my personal email address, because I only, it's a personal thing for me. Don't give this email out to anyone, but it's just for you guys. Email me if you're interested, and I'll give you a form to fill out on Google. And we have different packages available, but like I said, it's literally only for serious people. Because I go on Zoom calls with people who I interview for, you know, to see if they qualify. And a lot of people, they're just not serious. They're just like goofing around, because we take our shit very, very seriously, right? We want to change lives, and we've transformed people over the last 5 years. So if you are really, really serious about whatever your issue is, we can help solve it in a matter of 3 to 6 months, whatever that is. And you know, we're the best. So just throwing that out there for those of you who are interested. And I will pass it back to Andre.
Awesome. Thanks, Farhan. I just want to, of course, pimp out Aphro-D. So Imran has let me know, if you know you've experienced really great results with Aphro-D, then go to Aphro-D Health, the Facebook page, like the product page, and type in, you know, give us your review essentially, and let us know how it's benefited you, so we can benefit more people and grow this thing even more, and get more amazing feedback and webinars, masterclass, just build this community. So definitely give us a review. And also you can find one of our very first masterclass in the form of podcasts that Corey did on the subconscious. So I'm prompting everyone to go check out Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get podcasts. We have this show in podcast format. So we are very grateful for that. And of course, the man of the hour, I want to pimp out Corey. You can book a call with him. He has his Calendly link, which we'll put in on the description, or I'll just comment it on the actual show once we announce it. And I'll probably link it to the podcast. So we'll put it in the show notes, everything like that. Corey, he has a private Facebook group page. So I'll link that as well. And for everything Corey, you want to check out his courses, his book, book a call with him, go to CoreyZehnder.com. And that is spelled CoreyZehnder.com for our audio listeners. And thanks everyone for attending. And we will open it up for questions, just regardless if you want to, you know, just kind of chat, but I'll stop the recording here. Thanks, guys.